Ed?
Good evening, Senator McConnell. Great to have you on with me today. How are you, sir?
Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. I understand Senator Mitch McConnell, by the way, Senate Minority Leader, is going to be speaking at American Enterprise Institute. By the time this airs, it will be today. It will be on Friday. And you're going to be talking about an issue that has become rather delicate one in this presidential election cycle, and that's campaign finance reform in the First Amendment. A lot of talk about this right now, Senator McConnell. A lot of people are very angry over the existence of super PACs and saying that that people are trying to buy elections. Sheldon Adelson for Mitt Romney said he might kick in as much as $100 million into the super PAC, and people are outraged over the fact that people can spend that kind of money. What are you going to tell American Enterprise Institute?
Well, look, what I'm going to say at the American Enterprise Institute tomorrow is, wealthy people have every bit as much of a right to speak as anyone else. And don't assume all the wealthy people are opposed to Barack Obama. I wouldn't be surprised if George Soros spends every bit as much as anybody who is opposed to the president on the president's behalf. More alarming, frankly, than the fact that an awful lot of people are getting involved and wanting to make a difference to save this country are the tactics of the administration trying to shut everybody up. They have been busily at work, in the case of the Obama campaign, rummaging through the divorce files of one of the donors to Mitt Romney's super PAC, using the FEC, the FCC, the SEC, and the IRS to try to come down on independent groups to scare them, to try to shut them up. It's really reminiscent of the Nixon administration and the enemies list during those years. This administration actually can be compared to the Nixon administration in many ways. In particular, their desire to use all the power of government to come down on their critics. They're willing to go this far, Ed. Axelrod, the president's principal political advisor, said a couple of days ago that the president was going to try to amend the First Amendment for the first time in the history of the country, to carve a niche out of it so the government can get its hands on political speech. Well, look, that's what the First Amendment, the founders of this country, thought was all about, the core political discourse in the country. What's really upsetting these people is people right of center have gotten active, involved, and angry about what this crowd has done to this country by spending too much, borrowing too much, regulating too much. The persistent unemployment now for 40 straight months above 8%. This administration has been a demonstrable failure. And so people are fired up, and they want to contribute their money, and they want to put up yard signs and participate in every way you can in a free society. And so they want to bring the hammer of the federal government down on them and scare them to death. I'd make one final point. The Supreme Court dealt with this kind of an issue in a case called NAACP versus Alabama in 1958, a case in which the state of Alabama was after the membership list of the NAACP and the donor list of the NAACP, and the Supreme Court said you can't have it because the only rational basis to try to get the list was to try to intimidate people and scare people and defund, in effect, the NAACP. So this is not, all of this talk about disclosure, this is not so much about disclosure as it is about the effort to install fear, to use intimidation tactics, and to shut up their critics.
Well, Senator McConnell, I mean, first off, I agree with you, and the point that Sheldon Adelson made yesterday when he was asked about this was, look, George Soros runs millions and millions and millions of dollars into elections. He just does it through a bunch of shell organizations and corporations so that it flies under the radar. And really, that's been the problem with the whole campaign finance effort going back to the days of Watergate. Now, you know and I know that campaign finance reform was a product of the Watergate scandal, where they were trying to limit people's ability to use money in elections. But what it's done is it's created all these artificial designations of hard money versus soft money, PACs versus super PACs. And wouldn't it really just be a whole lot easier if we just said everybody can donate whatever they want to the candidate of their choice, You have to have full disclosure within 48 hours on the internet. We have a wonderful internet now. We can do that pretty easily. And no other political organizations are going to be tax exempt. So you can't write off your...
Well, Ed, you know my involvement in this issue going back a quarter of a century.
Yes.
I've been involved in 7 different lawsuits. I was the plaintiff against McCain-Feingold. I've spent the major part of my career in the Senate defending political speech. Look, contributions to candidates and to parties are already disclosed. They're already disclosed. So everybody knows who's contributing to candidates and to parties. What this jihad by the administration is about is not about contributions to candidates and to parties. It's about contributions to outside groups who have the right under the First Amendment to go out and criticize us or support us or to say anything else. Requiring disclosure of those groups allows a federal government with no principles to harass, intimidate, and scare these people off the playing field. And that's why the disclosure issue related to outside groups is a dangerous thing, because it gives to the administration, particularly a ruthless administration like this one, the power to shut people up. And believe me, they'll target their critics. They won't be targeting people like George Soros.
Yeah.
They'll be targeting groups that are engaging in speech that they don't like. Look, they didn't have any problem with all of this. Is not new. There was plenty of outside activity in 2008. It was almost entirely on the left in support of the president. Now that they don't, that there are a lot of people fired up in opposition to the president, all of a sudden they're offended, and they want to shut everybody up and bring the power of government down on them. They're probably going to bring up in the Senate at some point the so-called DISCLOSE Act.
Yes.
Again, saying, well, what could be possibly wrong with disclosure? We already have disclosure if you give to a candidate who may get elected to public office or his or her political party. Disclosure to outside groups is really about giving the government the power to intimidate and shut down its critics. Now, this DISCLOSE Act, you'd be interested to know, Ed, has got a big carve-out for organized labor, so they're not covered by it. So even in this bill, they want to pick winners and losers. The government ought not to have the ability and does not have the ability under the First Amendment to decide who speaks and who doesn't.
I mean, it takes 2/3 in Congress, in each house of Congress, and then 3/4 of the states. I frankly, Senator McConnell,
It's 2 men in the Constitution, which is what Axelrod said they wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean,
can you believe that?
Isn't that kind of dumb to make something like that, to make a statement like that? Because
it's radical. That is the ultimate act of radicalism, to say that we're going to take a chunk out of the First Amendment so that the government can determine who speaks and who doesn't.
Well, it's sort of
that's what this is all about. They want to quiet their critics, and that's why I say it's akin to the Nixon administration and its enemies list.
Isn't it somewhat the same thing for an administration to determine what qualifies and what doesn't qualify as religious expression with the HHS mandate? I mean, this is a pattern.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah,
same kind of thing.
Same amendment.
Yep. We're here to tell you how you can practice your religion. We're from the federal government, and we're here to tell you how to practice your religion. Same kind of thing.
It's a very frightening impulse that we're seeing in play. And what I find very interesting about this is, I've been around politics long enough to know that what goes around comes around. And it's one thing for people to say, well, we're going to hand this power off to, Barack Obama while he's president. But he's not going to be president forever. Maybe they think he is, but he's not going to be president forever. Eventually, a Republican will be in that office. And if a Republican used that power against a George Soros or against people on the left, you can bet your bottom dollar we'd be hearing about Richard Nixon and everything else. Front
page of the New York Times, my friend. That's where it would be if a Republican were doing exactly what this administration is doing right now.
It's an amazing thing. So you're going to be at AEI today, and you're going to be talking with the folks at AEI about this.
I'm going to make a major address on this subject. It's a subject I think the American people need to begin to pay more attention to, because the administration, in a heavy-handed way, is trying to quiet its critics, particularly between now and the election.
Well, Senator McConnell, I want to thank you for taking some time out to talk to us about this today. We're going to be keeping a close eye on this, and of course, if the DISCLOSE Act does make its way to the Senate floor, I'm pretty sure it's not going to get past cloture with with the number of Republicans that are already in there, but it's certainly something we're going to keep a very close eye on to make sure that it doesn't go any farther than a proposal. I want to thank you for your time, and good luck in your speech.
Thank you, Ed.